We do have a ton to get through in this episode.
Common sense is finally prevailing.
There was controversy this month, Dave.
I'm not particularly excited by that.
Secrets and things on set.
I haven't told them anything.
I think this is just good times all round.
Every Doctor Who is liked by somebody, and that's a really good thing.
Davo, my doctor.
I know we disagree on this one.
First world problems, Dave.
I get why fans are asking those questions.
Oh gosh, that's actually quite a lot to talk about.
It doesn't compute.
It's the elephant in the room.
That's okay.
Fandom versus the BBC.
The cardinal sin.
Moving along.
Lunch. Hello, it's the end of August and welcome to the Doctor Who Show. I'm Dave.
And I'm Rob, and I can't believe it's the end of August.
Well, I can, Rob, because this is our 5th Doctor Who show, something for the month of August. It was a 5-Sunday month, so we've had a Gin and TARDIS on Mark of the Rani, we've had a List Makers on Top 5 Master Stories, we've had your special interview with Dylan Rees about his new book coming out on Real Time Productions, we've had an Alternate Galaxies on Star Trek The Wrath of Khan.
And I produced all of these, so I should remember them.
You should, but it's the end of the month. It's our flagship show. And tonight we are doing a season deep dive into season 23 and a bonus.
Yes.
We're also doing a story deep dive into the trial of a Time Lord.
2 for the price of 1.
2 for the price of 1. Are you ready to kick into it, Rob?
I am ready, Dave. I am so ready.
Fantastic. I will just mention at the top that about the time this episode is dropping, I've also been a guest on the Sirens of Audio podcast, who are good friends of us here at the Doctor Who Show. They heard that I really enjoyed the Big Finish production of I, Davros, so they asked me to come on and chat about it.
That's very nice. I'll see your appearance and raise you one. I've recorded something for the Big Blue Box podcast earlier this month, and I think that will be coming out early-ish in September, so in the next week or so, maybe. Of course, that's up to them. It's when they put out their shows. Just me and one of the hosts, Gary, having a good old chinwag about Doctor Who.
Fantastic. So you can hear Doctor Who show people elsewhere out of the universe. I've always thought, Rob, we need to have one of those. Do you remember when Jennifer Saunders or Dawn French used to guest star, and at the end of the show it would say, you know, Dawn French appears courtesy of French Saunders Productions? I've always thought we needed one of those for us. But no, look, we are out there. Please do listen to our friends who have other podcasts out there. And speaking of Sirens of Audio, there are still tickets available for their Australian events with Carol Ann Ford later in this year. So check out their website if you want to see Carol Ann Ford.
Excellent.
We have some news, Rob. I'll kick us off. There was an article in the Radio Times that had a couple of points I think worth mentioning. The main thrust of it was about the upcoming The War Between the Land and the Sea, which, as we speculated, Rob, is confirmed to air in 2026.
Yes.
I'll just read a couple of paragraphs here. The upcoming spin-off is set to focus on Russell Tovey's Barclay, a normal man who is drawn into a mission to prevent a world-threatening conflict between humans and the iconic Doctor Who monsters, the Sea Devils. Tovey recently teased what's to come from the series, saying, "It's set in our world. Climate change is a huge factor. Again, it needs to be factored more into art so we really get an understanding of it." So, Rob, everything we kind of expected looks as though it's kind of happening with this show.
Well, yeah, I mean, this does take me back to, I think, our May episode. We had Nicola Methven writing in the Mirror about the future of the show, and she said that this would be airing in 2026. We reported it then, we've mentioned it since, and at the risk of going on the tabloids often get this stuff right, so why on earth does a certain kind of fan always push back on the tabloids? I'll just say, yeah, another example of a tabloid reporting something, and it's come true. Next time, dear listener, you get one of these fans who seem pathologically terrified of anything written in a tabloid, and they use something incredibly generic as their proof, like, "Oh, the newspapers lie," just say, "Oh, really?" and point out all the times in the past 5 years, 10 years, I don't care, that the tabloids have nailed it, absolutely nailed it in their stories.
Yes, so look, the speculation has been right. It's coming out next year. Russell Tovey's playing a normal man. Not sure what that means, but we'll find out. It's going to be him versus Sea Devils. That's cool. I'm interested to see what this does. But also in this article, I want to read another paragraph, Rob, that wasn't particularly about the Sea Devils.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking at Edinburgh TV Festival, Kate Phillips, the BBC's Director of Content, reassured Doctor Who fans about the main show's future while mentioning that the spin-off will air next year. So this has been circulating a lot online in Doctor Who fandom circles. This has been seen by some as the absolute proof Doctor Who will come back because the BBC has said we're not cancelling it, we want to bring it back. Now, I don't know whether it's just the vintage that we have, Rob, but I read these generic nebulous statements and get real 1989 vibes. Just, we're not saying it's cancelled. We'd love to bring it back when we're ready. I think to be more practical, it's what we've been saying for a long time. Yes, the BBC in principle would like to keep making some more Doctor Who. They don't yet know whether that means they need to get more streaming funding or they need to go it alone, which in practice means getting advanced overseas sales again. So it just comes back to, look, would the BBC like to keep making Doctor Who? Sure. How easy is it to turn the show back on now it's been completely turned off? I think harder than most of us really appreciate, but who knows?
Yeah, and what format does it take, which is a discussion we've had in past episodes. Does Doctor Who become 6 episodes every 18 months, which would, fans would sit up and go, oh my God, that's crazy, that's horrible, I never would have considered that. Well, look, we're considering it right here, right now. That could be what Doctor Who becomes in the future, because they will have to make cuts somewhere, I would say.
Yes, so all speculation, but Doctor Who is still in the news for not always good reasons, Rob. You've got our next story.
Yeah, next up, was it really 2021, Dave, when we heard that Noel Clarke, or Mickey Smith, the Doctor Who fans, had behaved inappropriately with multiple women. I think time just absolutely flies. Anyway, the news returned just recently that Clarke had been trying to sue the Guardian newspaper for reporting on this sexual misconduct, and now a judge has dismissed that libel claim, saying that The Guardian had succeeded in defending its stories on the grounds of truth and public interest. Which isn't to say, to be fair, that the judge agreed with everything. I've dug through it all, Dave, and she actually agreed with Clarke on some of the elements, but overall sided with The Guardian's reporting. So his libel claim has failed. And to conclude, as far as I can make out, Clarke still isn't actively involved, publicly at least, in any film or television projects since this went down back in 2021, and his future in the entertainment industry seems very uncertain. It seems to have been torpedoed, and I'll just say it does make it very hard to watch Series 1 of Doctor Who now, between Clarke and Bruno Langley, and I guess for some, Barrowman as well.
Yeah, I read the reporting of the judgment here and couldn't help but think of the words of a judge in another libel case here in Australia. To paraphrase him, Noel Clarke, having escaped the lion's den, went back to get his hat. And
yes, that's one of the great quotes.
Yeah, which is always a bit of a risk when doing libel. Yeah, look, it does. As you know, Rob, I'm not one of those people who says, well, I can never watch this series ever again, But you're right, it does cast it all in a difficult light, which is a shame because I absolutely love that first series of the new show. It does make you wonder about, I was going to say what was going on the set of Doctor Who, but I don't think that's fair. I think we have to ask what was going on at the BBC at this time. And I think, look, we love a lot of what the BBC does. Everybody listening to this loves so much of what the BBC has produced over the last 70, 80, 90 years in one form or another. But I think it is, very, very clear that there were some massive cultural issues at the BBC around the time that Doctor Who was coming back, and Doctor Who clearly was not immune, and that's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, very fair.
More positive, though, we like to keep in touch with what Doctor Who stars are doing following Doctor Who. And on 2 occasions in the last month, Rob, I was at the cinema. I've been to the cinema about 5 times in the last month.
Good Lord.
Some good movies coming out. I was at the cinemas watching a trailer and gone, hey, that's the Doctor. So the first one was I saw a trailer for Roses, and I saw that it starred Benedict Cumberbatch and Olivia Colman. So I thought, well, you can't do much more to put me off seeing this movie. And then I've gone, oh my God, that's Ncuti Gatwa. And I watched the trailer and I saw him and I thought, he's playing a Ncuti Gatwa character.
Yeah.
So, look, some interesting decisions Gatwa's making in his career. I wouldn't say that he's showing a lot of variety in what he does, but that's fine. He does what he does very well. So Ncuti Gatwa in cinemas at the moment playing Jeffrey, the front house manager at Ivy's restaurant in the movie Roses. But even more surprising, Rob, I was watching another movie. I went to see Weapons. Very, very good movie.
People say that, yeah.
Yeah, I was very impressed by it. And a trailer came on, and there was this bloke in full Johnny Rotten style punk, shaved head with the mohawk, looking disgusting, all the rest of it. I've gone, he looks really familiar. Then he smoked, I've gone, bloody hell, that's Matt Smith.
Oh, really?
So if you want to check out the movie Caught Stealing, starring Austin Butler, Russ the Punk is being played by Matt Smith. So there is somebody who does know the meaning of a bit of career divergence.
You know who always plays himself?
Tom Baker.
Tom Hanks.
Yes. Yes, that's true. He's made a very good career of playing Tom Hanks.
Yes, he has. Anyway, I digress.
But yes, look, you can see a couple of recent Doctors in movies this month.
Very good.
I'll keep us going with short topics, a couple from me, and I'll start off by saying, Rob, I intimated last time when you said, Dave, you're having a bit of a Davo period in your life at the moment.
Yes, you are.
And because I've been reading some Davo books, watching some Davo, and listening to some Davo Big Finish, and I mentioned I wasn't having a great time with the Davo I was reading at that time, that being The Crystal Bucephalus, which was the fourth missing adventure to come out, written by Craig Hinton. I have finished it since we last recorded, and look, it was a very cool idea of the Doctor having sort of almost accidentally invested in this time-travelling restaurant, which was kind of cool. Craig Hinton writes with a lot of love. He writes Davo pretty well. He writes Chameleon in a really good way, which I think is probably the standout feature of the book, but it's not one of the best missing adventures. I did struggle to get through it, so it's a weak bit of Davo for me. But yes, in the last year or so, I have read Goth Opera, I've read Lords of the Storm, love them both. Read The Crystal Bucephalus now, not that big a fan. There are two more Davo missing adventures, The Sands of Time and Cold Fusion, and I'm thinking I might have to check one of those out while I'm away on holiday next month.
Interesting. Yeah, let me know what you think.
I always do. One from you, Rob, and I know what you've written down here on the run sheet.
Yes.
I have no idea what this refers to, so please tell our listeners and me.
Well, what I've written on the run sheet, dear listener, is Star Trek Boo Boo. And it's not a Yogi Bear reference. It's one from the Mea Culpa files for me, Dave, because in our Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan episode of Alternate Galaxies that we made just this past month, I made a comment about potentially not having seen Star Trek in a cinema, with the jury possibly being out on whether I saw Generations in the cinema, and I was just too drunk to realise because I was at uni. Anyway, I came away from that chat and my edit of the episode and producing it and putting it out, and suddenly I realised, I was actually working for Paramount at the time of the Chris Pine, Zachary Quinto, J.J. Abrams Star Trek. That came out, that was about 2009, I think.
It was 2009, yeah.
Right, and I actually attended the world premiere for that at the Sydney Opera House. Well, it's the world premiere if you don't count this small fan event at the Alamo Draft House that they did for a tiny group of super fans. That was technically the world premiere, but really the world premiere was at the Sydney Opera House. I was there, I was in the audience, I was working the red carpet with some of my talent. Now, in my defence though, Dave, the Opera House isn't a cinema, and I think my brain has maybe deleted J.J. Abrams' Star Trek or Kelvin Star Trek as maybe not being Star Trek. That's why I wasn't thinking when I said, I've never seen a Star Trek at the movies. But I'm here to say I did see 2009 Star Trek on a big screen in a public space. Somehow I just blanked on that experience completely. So just to set the record straight and give you this fun anecdote, well, I hope it's been fun. I did see the 2009 Star Trek in that format.
That's very cool, actually.
It was.
That's pretty cool. I don't mind 2009 Star Trek. I loathe the next one and then really like the third one in the Kelvin run. But no, that's very cool. But yes, please check out our Alternate Galaxies on Star Trek 2. In a week or so's time, we'll have an Alternate Galaxies, the second of our 3 Star Treks, on Star Trek 6, The Undiscovered Country. And shortly after this episode goes out, we'll put a poll up so we can work out which of the Next Gen movies, listeners, you would like us to chat about as our third Trek movie, so that Rob and I have time to watch that before we record.
And having just listened to Patrick Stewart's autobiography, I know which of the Next Gen movies he likes and which ones he really slates.
Interesting.
But I'll keep that to myself for now.
No, I look forward to hearing all about that. A final short topic from me. I watched The Curse of Peladon in the last month, and I just wanted to say I really thoroughly, absolutely enjoyed that. Is it the absolute best, top 5 Pertwee story? No, probably not. There are better Pertwees, but I think The Curse of Peladon, to me, just shows how far the Pertwee era bats, how deep it bats, or just how high the average is, because I think this is a pretty middle-of-the-road story for Pertwee, and it's still really good. It looks great. The costumes, bit weird, but alien, different, interesting, looks great. Great sets, good models, a cool idea, lots of great lines. Pertwee and Katie Manning are just in absolute form. I'm really impressed at how well David Troughton just played all the nuances of King Peladon when he was still a very young actor. Look, Agador looks a little bit naff, I'll give him that, but I don't care. and it's interesting. It's as I've said before, it's portrayed as this sort of big analogy and about the UK entering the EEC at the time. And I've gone, look, yeah, that's sort of kind of the central premise. Like, what if this planet wanted to join a space union? But it doesn't really do anything with that idea other than set up a plot, and that's really cool. So I pulled out the Blu-ray, I put this on, and I just really thoroughly loved it. So if you haven't seen The Curse of Peladon for a while, give it a go.
Yeah, I think I've seen it in the last 2 or 3 years, maybe. It's a good one.
It is a good one. Rob, we've smashed through our news and short topics.
We did.
We're clearly excited to talk about the trial of the Time Lord. Doctor Who's longest ever story, if you count it as one story. I don't.
Do you not? Is that just because you want Hartnell to win?
Look, that's a big part of it.
Thought it might be.
But I do make the serious point. I've got a lot to say about the trial of a Time Lord. I've got a lot to say about the individual segments. But I've got a few comments that we'll talk about at the start about it overall. And one of them, jokes aside, is I did watch this and go, although the umbrella works perhaps better than I thought it would, I'll talk about that as we go through, it really is 4 different productions. I don't think you can really sort of deny that, and the fact that we do talk about Mindwarp and Vervoids more than we talk about Trial of a Time Lord parts 5 to 8 or whatever. So I think it's 4 stories, but it is technically one. It is a whole season. We're talking about it. Rob, what are your earliest memories of Trial of a Time Lord? What were your first impressions? When did you first see it?
This is a very important season in my personal Doctor Who fandom, Dave, because this is the first time I was seeing new Doctor Who on telly with the mindset, I am a Doctor Who fan. Wow. Look, over there on my desk, there's a copy of Dwim. I am a Doctor Who fan. Prior to this, I'd certainly seen my share of Doctor Who. And some of it would have been first-run stuff, notably Dave-O and the first Colin season. It had only run once. I had seen it. But this was the first time I'd be sitting there, engaged. I'm a fan. I'm actively anticipating content that I already know a bit about in advance because I've read about it in Dwim or something, from my show. So this was in Australia 1987. It was February. I'm 11 years old. It's smack bang when I'm meeting Mark Douglas from the local fan group at the library. Regular listeners will have heard that story a million times. And I'm being invited to take the next big step in fandom. So just great days when this aired in Australia for me, Dave. This is me and my fandom ascendancy.
Well, that's really cool and different to me. And this is where our 5-year age gap, Rob, really comes into play when we're talking about the mid-'80s. As we discussed when we talked about The Never-Ending Story. Yeah, you're right. This was first broadcast in Australia on Saturdays. They showed 2 episodes merged together on Saturday afternoons, starting from the 7th of February in 1987. This came at the end of a golden run of Doctor Who for us in Australia. There was something like 15 months solid of Doctor Who being shown in Australia leading up to this. Davo first broadcasts, and then that repeat run where they started with the Mind Robber and went right through to Terror of the Zygons. What a time.
Yeah.
I do remember this being on Saturday afternoons. I remember it being strange that Doctor Who was on Saturday afternoons. I suspect I missed a couple of episodes because it was on Saturday afternoons, but this is very much in the period. This is probably the last season where I remember it going out on first broadcast, but only as fragments and as images. I can remember bits of Mindwarp. I remember getting the idea that the Matrix was lying, and this was a previous story that had been warped and was lying to, and because I didn't understand that you could just create a previous story, I thought, oh, they're retelling Vengeance on Varos with Syl, but like differently.
Right.
That's how my 6-year-old brain interpreted it all. I remember a couple of images of Drathro. I certainly remember some stuff from Vervoids. I remember the dude going out to shake his hand and getting the dart in it, things like that. Mm-hmm. So I have memories of that, but an important season in some ways for Doctor Who fans here in Australia, because this was a very rare one that wasn't repeated for many, many years. And I know at the local club in the late 80s, early 90s, this was something that was really in demand. People wanted to see Trial of a Time Lord. And outside of meetings where we had a guest or, we showed the telemovie for the first time, the meeting where we showed all of Trial of a Time Lord one Saturday afternoon in about 1993, I want to say. Mm-hmm. That was the biggest selling meeting we ever did as a local fan club.
That's wild. Wow.
Yeah, because it hadn't been repeated. It wasn't out on VHS at that stage. So most people didn't have a copy of this epic, notorious story. So it was a really, almost had a mystique about it. And then, of course, for the 30th anniversary, this was the big VHS release in the TARDIS box tin with fantastic art by Alistair Pearson, just gorgeous, gorgeous art. And so I remember going into the city with my parents for something or other and stopping by the ABC shop, and they sort of looked at me and gone, "You've been really good lately. Would you like us to buy you the Trial of a Time Lord tin?" And like, oh my God, it's $100. They're buying me the trial tin. It turns out it was half price. It was only $50. And I suspect they knew that. But yeah, like that was a big deal as a 13-year-old to be like, get the trial tin, because that was outside of pocket money range.
3 things to say here. I'll work backwards. First of all, the trial tin had all the different doctors printed on the bottom of the tin. So you could get the tin with Davo on the bottom, or Colin, or one of the other doctors. I always thought that was bizarre, Dave. I thought, well, the only logical doctor to get on there is Colin, because Colin is in it. I didn't understand why you would want a different doctor on the bottom of the trial tin.
Well, I got Pertwee because at the time Pertwee was my favourite doctor, and as a 13-year-old, I want the one with my favourite doctor. So I did get that. I do know 2 local fans who bought all 7 versions.
Christ. Wow.
And they didn't do it on sale either. They spent $700. So that's £350 for UK listeners in $1993 to have 7 copies of the trial tin.
That's amazing.
That is amazing.
The other 2 things I'm going to say real quick is, one, we got this very soon after the UK. I think it stopped airing in the UK around December of 86, and by February of 87 we're seeing it. That was pretty unusual for Doctor Who.
Yes.
Also, when you think of season 22 being 45-minute episodes, and in Australia we had edited episodes, so they were more like 25-minute episodes, we then get to this season where Doctor Who went back to 25-minute episodes. The ABC aired them as double episodes.
That's true.
It was quite weird.
That is true. So, yeah, look, a bit of mystique around this one. Rob, I assume you've watched this in the last few weeks.
Yes, I have.
Give us your new thoughts. What do you think of Trial now? Just big overview.
I was surprised, Dave, at how watchable this was. Whenever I put on a disc, I was finding myself doing 2 or 3 episodes in a sitting and not feeling like it was any sort of problem. It's just one of those situations, I think, where so long after the event, after the initial airing, after the dust has settled, nothing's riding on it. You can just watch something and let it land where it lands. And yeah, there are some bits that look, lame AF. And you think, am I seriously sitting here 50 years old watching this? I think of Colin opening his umbrella during the stoning scene, as I say this, Dave. There's stuff I would be dead set embarrassed to share with friends now. There would have been stuff I was dead set embarrassed to share with friends when I was a kid. But again, I found it super watchable on this run through. So easy to knock through episodes. So this rewatch was no hardship. It was easy.
Now, I last watched this probably 4, 5, maybe 6 years ago. I don't know if you remember, Rob, but I watched it and reported it back for the Doctor Who show because I did an experiment where I watched trial 1 episode a week for 14 weeks.
Oh, God, that takes me back.
Yeah, and came back on the Doctor Who show sort of about 3 or 4 times and reported how it was going. And my memory of that and what I said at the time was that I really struggled with it 1 episode a week, and that by the time I was sort of in episode 10, let alone episode 14, it was dragging. Yes, I liked individual aspects of it, but the whole arc was just a blur to me, and it was an experiment that had failed. I really didn't find that worked for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I walked into this rewatch thinking, I didn't like it last time. I've just said on the list makers that I think that Mindwarp is one of my least favourite Doctor Who stories.
Yeah.
And I thought, this is probably a contender for one of the worst, if not the worst, season of classic Doctor Who. And as I started watching this, again, over the space of about a fortnight, like you, 2, sometimes 3 episodes in a go, I was saying to myself, I'm really enjoying this. This is actually quite fun. Yes, it's got its faults. I'm not saying it's about to compete with, season 7 or 18 or season 2 or something like that.
No.
But no, this is lifted off the bottom of the ladder for me. I have enjoyed this watch and I have a number of things to say about that. But a big theme I'm going to come back to several times is just Colin.
Okay. Colin. Right.
So look, I said at the start, Rob, I really think this is 4 stories. We're going to talk about it as 4 stories. Did you agree or did you really find this was 1?
I kind of took it as 1 story. Obviously, I know the delineation of the stories. I was buying the Target novels back in the day. That's what first hammered the individual titles into my head and how they were individual stories. But I kind of took it to be 1 big story, with the trial being the through line. I'm not telling anyone anything new by saying that, but that's how I watched it. Yeah.
No, fair enough. Well, look, for ease of conversation, we have broken it down into its segments. And I'll kick us off by talking about The Mysterious Planet, which I watched the first 2 episodes of this and just thought, this is a really, really fun story. Mm-hmm. Colin is really enjoyable to watch. Nicola, I think this is probably her best story with Colin Baker. I think that she works really well with Davo, but took a long time to find her character with Colin, but finally finds it here. And when you watch it, you can see this. The dialogue was written like season 22, with them bickering. But Colin and Nicola just said, no, we're not going to play it like that. And they give the same dialogue, but just in a fun sort of tone. And it works really, really well. And it looks great. Yes, like you said, there are some poor, cheap moments, but the trial station is a very impressive model. The set isn't too bad, but all that location filming is great. Drathro is really cool, and he looks kind of like a man in a suit, but they've gone to some lengths to make it not look like a man in a suit. He's taller. He's got that weird horn head thing. I was laughing at the Hunker and Tandril, whatever their names were, stuff. I really enjoyed this. Got some faults, got some more to say, but that's my opening on The Mysterious Planet, Rob. How about you?
Well, fun fact, Dave, that opening scene that everyone talks about is still pretty impressive today with the space station.
Yeah.
But I believe it was intended to be even better. The original idea, apparently, was a bunch of shipwrecked spacecraft, and in the middle of it would be this cathedral sort of building.
Yes.
And I believe that's why Dominic Glynn's score goes into that churchy organ sort of direction, because it's meant to be... Well, I mean, the model they've got still looks a bit cathedral-like, but it was going to be more of a churchy, cathedral-y thing, and that's why the music goes in that direction. I think that would have looked really great, but it is still really great with what they put on the screen. Now, I completely concur with everything you've said, the way Colin and Nicola get on, all that sort of stuff. But I do find this one a strange story on many levels. For starters, this is the big Doctor Who is back story, but not much has changed. Colin and Nicola have grown their hair a bit. Nicola's more covered up. The dads will be a bit disappointed. But otherwise, it's the Colin Baker era just continuing on. I find that odd. It's also odd because I think Robert Holmes is a bit off the mark here. I mean, you mentioned, there are some funny sort of double acts in this, Glitz and Dibber, a funny double act, but they're kind of like a knockoff of like what we saw in the Ribos operation and not as good. But the big one for me, Dave, is that with hindsight, we know the Doctor has uncovered the Time Lords have buggered up the Earth and they've hidden it away and Ravolox is the Earth and all this stuff. Now, if the Valiard can get him taken out, the problem goes away for the Time Lords. The Valiard gets his lives. We learn all this as the show goes on. So why on earth choose to prosecute him with the story where the secret's let out of the bag about this with very few edits? They just sort of bleep out a word. And they show this to a group of very esteemed Time Lords? That just doesn't make sense. And the moment you think of it, you think, oh God, the whole story's just fallen over. Or is it just me?
It's not just you. I'll pick up on that point. As I watched this in order, I thought, you know what, these clues about the trial and the Ark story are actually reasonably nicely seated in here for 1986 Doctor Who. You get that idea of, what is it that Glitz is after? What is it that they're beeping out? You have the whole mystery that the Doctor leaves and goes, I still don't know why Ravolox is Earth. This is really weird. And I think that does set up the mystery very well. You are absolutely right, though. When you get to parts 13, 14, you do sit there and go, well, why the hell did the Valiard highlight this?
Yeah, that makes no sense.
So that does make no sense, but I don't think that's the mysterious planet's problem. That is the overall Ark's problem. So I get that. To pick up on another point you made there, Rob, about the score, I've said many times that Dominic Glynn is up there as one of my absolute favourite Doctor Who composers. I think he's done some magnificent scores, and his score for The Mysterious Planet is one of them. I think that's a really excellent, lovely score that makes really good use of the indoors and the outdoors. And I also actually really enjoy most of his Doctor Who theme, with the exception of the middle eighth, which I think is a bit thin.
Okay.
But no, I thought this worked pretty well. I do agree that Holmes's double act writing in his wit is not up to standard, but let's be honest, Robert Holmes, even on a bad day, is better than a lot of writers on a good day. So I don't mind that. Glitz and Dibber work really well. I still get a real chuckle at the "Take Me to Your Leader" line. I just think that's a really nice moment. I do forget, though, when I haven't watched this for a while, what an utter bastard Glitz is in The Mysterious Planet. He's willing just to wipe out the entire underground community and without even thinking. He's a really cold-hearted bastard. Tony Selby makes him come alive. Rob, I walked into Mysterious Planet thinking it was an okay story. I walked out after 4 episodes going, is this my new favourite story in the trial?
Oh, that's a big call.
It is.
I highlighted some things I didn't like in it. I could go on, though. Like, water is really rare, Dave. So what we're going to do is we're going to put water in a jug and put it on a little stand, and then we're all going to hide behind the door. So that if someone tries to take the water, we'll jump out from the door. Bah!
Oh, the direction of that is woeful.
And it's like, how is this realistic in any sort of way?
Yeah, that direction is woeful.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned the umbrella scene and the stoning earlier. There are just so many little bits. I'm like, no, what? So I couldn't go as far to say this is like my new favourite story, like you're saying, but it's perfectly watchable. I go back to that earlier comment. This is part of the run of episodes here that was just perfectly watchable. I'm fine with it.
No, fair enough. Keep us going, Rob, because we now have what I would call Mindwarp, what you are going to call Trial of a Time Lord, episodes 5 to 9.
Yes, Dave. This one was interesting to go back to because for the longest time on the show, you've been really down on it. I've certainly never been a fan of it. Yet we had a listener, I think earlier this year, write to us how much they liked Mindwarp, especially when they watch it with the mindset that the Valiard is manipulating things, And when they watch it with that mindset, they're cool with it. And I've certainly read critiques of it in fan-published things where people are really quite crackers for this story, Dave. They think it's great. Some people legit call this the best story in the season. So there's something in it for people to be saying that sort of thing. I'm not blind to that. But my takeaway, watching it again now, still has me on the wrong side of the fence. I just see this as a lot of running around a pretty boring set and people shouting, especially Brian Blessed, but not just Brian Blessed. There's the overdone but quite colourful paint box stuff on location, which is kind of cool, but otherwise the story just sort of washes over me. And the whole thing about the manipulated evidence that our listener wrote to us about, it's very garbled. You don't know at any given moment whether the Doctor's mind is a bit scrambled within the parameters of the story, or whether the Doctor's actually working on a cunning plan and just pretending, or whether the Valeyard has tampered with the evidence. And I just find that taxing. I don't think of it as, oh gosh, this is intriguing. I think of it as, oh gosh, this is really badly done. And apparently even Colin was asking on the set, how am I meant to play this bit? And the answer was, oh, well, ask Saywood. And Saywood would be no help. So when the show went out, Philip Martin was sat at home watching it and realised they were playing some scenes completely wrong to how they were meant to be played, either through Saywood rewrites or miscommunication on the set, or maybe no communication on the set. So I say this story is a genuine mess, no matter how many people out there want to like it.
Yeah, I just want to pick up on that comment that you made there, because there is a bit of an urban myth that has really become quite dominant in Doctor Who fandom over the years. I think because Colin himself has told it so many times that it's sort of become incorrect in the telling, which is that he would go to the director and say, oh, how does this want to be played? What's going on here? And the director would say, go talk to the script editor. And the script editor would say, go talk to the writer, and yada, yada, yada. And no one could tell Colin. But if you listen to the commentary of Mindwarp, Colin is relaying this to Philip Martin, and Philip Martin goes, well, hang on. Just for the record, neither the director nor the script editor came and asked me, and if they had, I had the answers, and I couldn't have told you. So Philip Martin clearly did know what was going on, and I think it's actually quite clear. But to pull back for a moment, Mindwarp, yeah, it's one we've discussed very, very often. It's also within a very uniquely regarded mystical sort of season in Australia, perhaps the most mystical story, because for a long time Mindwarp was the most expensive novelisation.
That's true.
To get in Australian fan circles, and regularly you would see copies going for 3 figures very, very easily.
Yeah.
I now have 2.
Oh, really?
Now that eBay's been invented, that problem is kind of solved, because you can get it from anywhere. Whereas in Australia, you have to wait for somebody in the same city as you to want to sell a copy, and that didn't happen often. So it sort of has this real mystique. I did walk into this going, I am going to do everything I can to put aside my views and really try and watch this with fresh eyes. Again, not one episode a week for 4 weeks, but over the course of a couple of nights. And I did appreciate it a lot more than I had. Can I say that this was a fun watch that I enjoyed in the way that I watched The Mysterious Planet? No. But I did appreciate what it's doing and thought this is doing what it wants to mostly very, very well. It certainly looks good. Yes, occasionally garish. Yes, occasionally 1980s experiments don't work. But the cast is strong, the music's strong, and it's a composer that only does one story for Doctor Who. The director's really having a crack at doing some different things. I think there's a lot to commend it. But the thing that I really took away from this was how good Colin's performance actually is in this. And watching very carefully the trial scenes particularly, and I'll come back to those in a moment, but watching them, I can actually watch Colin Baker or the Doctor realise that after a few episodes of, well, this is just your typical Time Lord bureaucratic palaver, and I'm going to poke some fun at them and have a laugh and tease them, and it'll all be okay, just like it always is. But as Mindwarp starts to play out, even in part 5, I can see the Doctor just go, something else is up. Something's not right, and this is actually quite serious. And then that really continues right through to that cliffhanger at the end of episode 7, where he thinks Perry's been killed for the first time, and then finally the one where he thinks Perry has actually been killed. And I just thought, Colin's performance in this is a really, really strong one that I perhaps hadn't appreciated before. More thoughts, Rob, but reaction to that?
Yeah, I think some of that stuff begins even earlier, because is it the episode 1 trial scenes where he even says, "Where's Perry?" And the valet is like, "Don't you remember?" And gives him this sort of pointed look. And the look Colin does in return is quite good, even back there. But yes, it becomes more overt, obviously, during this episode when he realises what's going on. I think Nicola getting to play as Lord Kiv is really cool. And using, as she famously will say in all her interviews, using her own voice. People think it's some sort of synthesized thing, but she's actually just putting on a voice and imitating him. Mike the Cool Person from The Young Ones.
Yes.
Lord Kiv, if anyone noticed. Yeah, look, again, this, as I've said, I watched the whole thing 2-3 episodes at a stretch, and I was finding I could watch this, it was watchable, but I just did find it a lot of running around sets and shouting and stuff, but there were good moments in it. I think the moment the Time Lords yank the Doctor, the light shines down on him and he walks backwards into the TARDIS. What a time to yank him out and basically consign Perry to death.
Yeah, there are definitely some weak moments in this. I think that the cliffhanger to Part 7, where there are sort of about 7 people all standing in about 2 square metres, and they have to hold guns at arm's length, and they're not even great gun props. They sort of have to wave a prop at each other and then sort of fall down, again, all in the space of about a metre.
Those upside-down guns. They look like they should be around the other way.
Yeah, so there's some stuff like that that's not really done. And look, I do reiterate the point that I do find the nastiness here is unpleasant. I think the way the Doctor is dismissive of Perry is really unpleasant to watch, knowing what's happening. So it's not a fun story. It's not one that works for me. But you're right. The build-up of the tension is really effective. The director's done a really good job with that. And as you say, this sense, once things start to get out of the Doctor's control, that actually something really bad's going to happen here, up to when he's then taken out of time and taken to the trial, and then things do go crazy, up to you've killed Perry. Really, really effective. So I do give it points for doing what it wants to do quite well, and I give Brian Blessed some points. Now, I've gone on record saying that Brian Blessed playing Emperor Augustus in I, Claudius is literally right up there as one of the absolute best performances by an English actor on British TV that I've ever seen. Mm-hmm. After that, he did Flash Gordon. It was all down the hill from there.
Yeah. Everything's been a pastiche of his Flash Gordon character since.
But there are moments in this when he does bring it down, you just go, yeah, he still can act. The moment when he's just being brave about the death of Dorf, his old, dearest warrior companion, and he's clearly personally upset but knows he's a king, and no, it's an honourable death, and I'll be strong, but he's clearly weeping on the inside. The Die Well, My Love moment, I just think he's perfectly played, just utterly perfectly played. So I give it points for that. So there's a lot here that I respected. I don't hate it the way I used to. I've appreciated it a lot more.
Very good.
I want to talk about the trial because of all the evidence-based segments. This is the only one where I really thought this trial is actually getting bloody annoying. They're cutting away too often and too much. And I was thinking about what a trial would mean on TV to a UK audience in 1986. Whether it's sort of US shows like Perry Mason or a staple like Rumpole of the Bailey. Trials on TV in that stage were all about the barristers getting up and being very clever, outwitting somebody on the stand, bringing in a new piece of evidence, pulling something together. That there's a wit and a playfulness to it. And I just don't think you get that with the Doctor shouting names at the Valeyard the whole time. Now, obviously, trial TV has evolved now, and Law and Order and a whole bunch of things, Suits, where it's sort of all about now on TV, the movement to have this stricken from the record. That sort of just clever lawyer stuff, which is terrible. But this isn't a witty, clever trial scene. It's the Doctor being a bit petulant. It's the Valeyard being sneering. It doesn't work. It's a shame because Colin plays it really well. But no, this is the one part of the trial show where I just go, every time they come back to the trial, it's like, oh, for God's sakes, I was just getting into that. Stop it.
Well, the interesting thing is it's not even technically a trial. Let's say that quietly because we might pop some illusions out there. It's actually an inquiry into the Doctor.
Yes. There's the whole bit where the Valeyard says, this should now become a trial. And the Inquisitor's like, no, sit down, it's not. But at some point it does.
And because the show is called Trial of a Time Lord, it's just taken to be a trial. But it's not, folks. It's not.
Yes, no, it's not. Any other thoughts on Mindwarp, or should we kick along?
Let's kick along.
Terror of the Vervoids.
Mm-hmm.
I walked into this thinking it was my favourite Colin Baker story.
Okay.
I enjoyed it. It is also fun. Colin, I think, does give his best performance in the role in this story. I will absolutely argue that. I think that Pip and Jane Baker, as we said on Argent and TARDIS, Pip and Jane Baker absolutely just get Colin Baker's Doctor. There's something about their writing that really works for Colin, and he plays it here. He's light, he's funny, he gets on so well with Mel, who, again, I'll talk more about, but works well with Colin's Doctor. There's a lot to love in here. It's got some layers, it's got a bit of mystery, but I just found as I was watching it, it looks crap. It really looks crap. Compared to the first two, it really looks crap. And it doesn't quite hold together as well as I remembered. So I walked in thinking this was my favourite Colin, certainly my favourite trial story. I walked out going, I think it's my favourite Colin performance, but I think that Mysterious Planet has eclipsed it.
Interesting. I think this is an example of how a story can have just as many issues as the others we've just spoken about, but still work. And I think it's still the best of the season, Dave.
Okay.
And when we talk about issues, let's begin with the Doctor presenting evidence from his future, the idea of that. That doesn't seem to raise an eyebrow for anyone. Like, there's no explanation made for how that works. Is it a given that he's going to survive the inquiry or the trial, whatever we want to call it, as there's obviously a future ahead of him? Is it an alternate future? Is it a possible future? Did it really happen? If it did, then he must get out of the trial. But no one seems to be sitting there thinking that. Anyway, put that aside. Just as the Valeyard presenting evidence that revealed the secret Time Lord business in the first story, that was weird. Here, the Doctor thinks the best story to show what a good guy he is one where he kills off an enemy completely. And genocide never crossed his mind when he was preparing this evidence. That's also weird. There's also stuff all through the script that's never made sense to me, like splashing water on the Megarians wrecks their environment suits. I mean, how bad are those suits? and if they can't deal with oxygen, how have they been drinking tea all along? What a Pip and Jane Baker thinks in water. Anyway, I get that it's Agatha Christie in space in terms of a story, but why does the Doctor need to present it as an Agatha Christie in the trial? Like, and here we are on the ship, and before we're done, someone's going to die, you know? Why does he need to do that? Why isn't he just presenting the evidence? Yet, despite all of that, Colin is charming. Mel is a very proactive, let's investigate kind of companion, very different to how Perry's been for the last few years. And I find that pile of bodies at the end really quite horrific and absolutely chilling as a visual to look at. All these people we've been watching in these last few episodes, and they're all just piled up one on top of one another like a mass grave. I think that's very chilling. So I think it still works in spite of itself, Dave. It's, you know, without spoiling that what we're going to talk about next, it's still my favourite of the season.
You know what I have to say to that, Rob?
Yes?
The bogus Megarian did not switch on his translator. It's all worth it just for that line. Look, everything you say is true. I also made the comment about the fact that however you cut it, you cannot make any sense of this being the Doctor's evidence. At some point when Robert Holmes has gone early in the conception of the Trial of a Time Lord season, let's do past, present and future, and everyone's gone, oh yeah, like A Christmas Carol, let's do that.
I think J&T might have said that.
No, it was Robert Holmes. I hate to say it because I love Robert Holmes. It was Robert Holmes.
Okay.
And I hate to say that because, you know, I love the man, but yeah, it was his fault. But nobody around there said, well, hang on, how does that work? So yes, that makes no sense. Also, what I said a few moments ago about, you know, what we expect from a TV trial and wit and barristers outwitting each other. The Doctor's entire argument after watching 4 episodes comes down to, Well, before I interfered, he asked me nicely. And the Inquisitor says, yes, he did. That's it. Well done, Doctor. Not guilty. I mean, what?
Yeah.
What? It's just embarrassing. So look, that doesn't work. That all said, I do think that the trial scenes here interact with the main evidence really, really well. I think that they only cut back to the trial room when the trial has something to say about the scenes or when it's going to impact the plot. I didn't feel it was breaking in the way it was with Mindwarp, so I did enjoy that. I thought that worked really well. I want to praise the cast. We've got Inspector Kite from season 3 of The Bill getting killed. Mel rocks up and does a really good job, and again, I think that Bonnie Langford's theatre-style performance works well with Colin's theatre-style performance. So that's good. Lots of, big names that come up in this. Michael Craig, who was a big name on ABC television a few years after this. He was in one of the absolute hits for the ABC GP. Not long after this, during which time...
Yes, that went for a long time. That was like 6 or 7 seasons, wasn't it?
It was a big deal, and he was the star of that. And a couple of times during that period, locals at the Doctor Who fandom here in Melbourne did get in touch and ask if you'd like to be interviewed for our fanzine, and the comment basically came back, why would I want to do that? It was a silly program. I'm a serious person. Now go away.
Wow.
He's clearly mellowed since then because he's quite charming and affable about it in the docos. But at the time, he was a big name. It was, why would I do that? That was silly. I don't want to remember that.
He might have been getting a fee for the doco.
Yeah, that's very, very true. Look, I think it all works. It's got someone from House of Cards. It's got someone from that terrible Bond movie. It all works. Like, it all holds together. Pip and Jane Baker are very good at making sure that 1 + 1 = 2 at the end of the story. So in that sense, it does work. Some of it's a bit ridiculous. Look, I still think it's good. I like Colin. I enjoy it. It was a fun watch. But I don't think it looked... Well, let's face it, it didn't look as good as Mysterious Planet. The money was running out here. The video effects for the model shots are appallingly bad. The spaceship looks like a flying steam iron. It's just, oh, God. The Vervoids, nice design. They're creepy, but they also just look like a bunch of foam stuck on a man, let's be honest. So, look, faults, but I did enjoy it. I did enjoy watching it. It was fun.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was looking at some of those effects of the spaceship and thinking, oh, God, this is like something out of the early Tom Baker era. And then I stopped and thought, well, hang on. The early Tom Baker era was only like a decade before this. So although some things had gotten better with Doctor Who, like we'd got synthesized music and we'd got, flashy opening titles and all of that, really, some of the effects weren't going to be much better than the Tom era unless they were spending loads and loads and loads of money on them, like the opening shot in episode 1, where they used the special camera to do it. So it's something to remember when you watch this, that although it looks more modern than Tom's first or second season, it's only a decade on from that. Yeah,
that is very, very true. But you're right, Rob. At the end of this, the Doctor has just basically confessed to genocide.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Whoops.
Yeah.
And it's time to move on to the ultimate foe.
Yeah, and I think the first thing to say about this, Dave, is that it has so many writers involved, Robert Holmes, Eric Sayward, Pip and Jane, and effectively no script editor at the end of the day, that it really has no right to be as good as it is. Which isn't to say that it's brilliant, but it's way better than that sort of lineage should be producing. I'm sure people know the backstory, but briefly, Holmes died before he could finish the story. Sayward finished it, then lost his mind at JNT, quit his job, and took the final episode with him, so Pip and Jane had to come in and, without knowing what was in the previous episode 14 script, produce something. Now, for me, the story really opens up more questions than it answers, really, and this goes back to when I was a kid. I could understand the idea of future Doctors, and that while we were watching the Sixth Doctor on TV, there could indeed be future Doctors out there, and it was only the limitation of Doctor Who being a TV show that's made in a linear way that made us see things the way we were seeing them. So I could comprehend that there would be different Doctors out there, future Doctors. But the concept of the Valeyard being in between two incarnations of the Doctor, how did that work? to me, you would have one doctor, then you would have another. How would you have this in-between person? I guess the Watcher is sort of an in-betweener, but they don't hang around for long and they're quite mysterious. How long has the Valeyard existed? How did he get his ID to go and drink in pubs? You know, if he's the Doctor, but he's not quite the Doctor. Who do people think he is? How does he get work? Is he just on Gallifrey the whole time? Why would that interest him? If he is the Doctor was never interested in hanging around on Gallifrey, so why would the Valeyard do it? It never made sense to me, Dave, and it still doesn't make sense to me now.
I have the advantage here, Rob.
Yes.
That I was 6 when I first watched this, and was 12 when I saw it properly on video. And it made perfect sense to me. They said he's a distillation of evil, so I just thought the Time Lord's got some sort of Time Lord machine. They put in the computer program, create a evil version of the Doctor, take all the evil aspects of the Doctor and make it a thing, push the on button, and there was the Valeyard. And they've gone, right, now we've got this thing, go prosecute that guy, and if you do, we'll give you all his lives. To me, it was that simple and that obvious, and that sort of boyish simplicity has stuck with me.
That's really good. I might buy into that idea. That makes sense to me. but for all these years, all these decades, I've been like, this just makes no sense. I don't get it.
I watched this and I thought the first 15 minutes was really quite good. Given that he's basically all in one room, I thought this is actually really good. Colin, Michael Jaston play it really well. Anthony Ainley comes in and actually is pretty good for that first 10 minutes. The revelation that the Valeyard is the Doctor is really well done, and Colin plays it really, really well. After that, I did feel it did taper off a bit and sort of got a bit like, okay, where are they going with it? And then, yes, unfortunately, the part 14 that was written with all the complications, you say, look, it holds together just about. As a run-around adventure, it's okay. But there's a lot of, why is Glitz doing this? Why is the Master working with that guy? Why is the Valeyard doing this? What does he want out of it? How does that work? What's his plan? I don't know. It doesn't really hold up. I think the Valeyard does descend from sneering courtroom villain to sort of just cackling generic bad guy. Some nice ideas, some nice imagery. I didn't hate it, but I thought this was probably the weakest part of the trial, certainly averaging it out, because it gets worse as it goes along.
Yeah. I got something new out of this watch, Dave, and I might say this and you'll be like, yeah, have you never noticed that before? or maybe you'll be amazed too. I really don't know. There's a scene where Glitz is stealing some Matrix tapes in episode 14.
Yes.
And Popperwick stops him. Okay, it sounds like you know what I'm going to say.
I know where you're going. It's good, yes.
Okay. And the conversation runs along the lines of Glitz having in his possession phases 3, 4, 5, and 6. And Popperwick says, well, the primitive phases 1 and 2 are now in the archive. And given that the box Glitz is holding is a videotape box like they would have in the BBC archive, and the Matrix obviously catalogues the Doctor's adventures, I really had never twigged on quite how meta and kind of bitchy, actually, yes, that comment was.
Yes, I'm not sure whether it was a comment on how poor Black and White Doctor Who was, or just that they'd lost a lot of it. But yes, there is something meta going on there. I do think that, as I said about Vervoids, Pip and Jane Baker do ensure that at the end of the day, 1 + 1 = 2. So yep, all the questions that were set up in Mysterious Planet, all the implications of that were then brought out in Mindwarp and Terror of the Vervoids, actually do all pay off. And they are tied up in a nice little bow. Is it necessarily the most satisfying bow? Okay, probably not. But compared to something like The Key to Time, where the setup of that's just complete, what? How does that work? Yeah. I do give it credit that all the little bits do finally add up, and it works. Now, that said, it works because we both watched this over the course of about a fortnight. Going back to my earlier comments in the episode, watching this one episode a week for 14 weeks, I didn't think it worked at all. So I'm very open to the idea that my perspective and viewing habit of this has had a very material impact on how well I thought the trial plot worked.
Okay, because I've got to say I still do query stuff. For example, the Doctor has seen his future through the Matrix does he now go on the Vervoids adventure in the future with the ability to do things differently? Or is his memory just automatically erased of having seen it? Did he watch any other adventures before he chose the Vervoids adventure, so he's seen other future adventures of his? You know, there's also that question of Mel leaving with the Doctor at the end, when technically he hasn't picked her up yet in the first place. I seem to recall the novelisation might have included a scene where there were 2 Sixth Doctors briefly, and she's sort of handed over to the right Doctor, and the Trial Doctor leaves to have adventures before he meets her. So they sort of tie it off, but that's in the novel. It's not in the episode.
Okay, I didn't know that was in the novel, because I definitely remember Brendan Jones on Flight Through Entirety did make the suggestion of exactly that. He said what you need is Colin in his Vervoids costume to suddenly burst in and go, Mel, you belong with me. You know, he hasn't met you yet. Come along. And then the contemporary Doctor goes away going, well, I guess I'm going off to meet Mel sometime. You're right, they don't tie that up as well, but that's a timey-wimey problem that classic Doctor Who dealt with a lot.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure it's in the novel. Otherwise,
okay.
A fan must have wrote it, and I'm hallucinating.
Okay.
And still, Dave, no mention of whether Colin wants to do anything with Perry now. He gets told that she's living with Brian Blessed, and he's like, oh, hey, great. And he just leaves it at that. Why not go and visit Perry and say, hey, sorry for all that weirdness earlier. Is this how you saw life working out? Can I help? He's just like, oh, she's with Brian Blessed. Great. Move on.
That is definitely a problem. And clearly it's a symptom of the fact that they basically panicked and decided to undead Perry. So
yeah.
So that line has been inserted without any real sort of thought or consequence. But to once again mention one of my favourite new adventures, Bad Therapy, it is all dealt with in that, and very, very well by Matthew Jones.
Is that right?
That is right.
What a random book to deal with this.
It totally is, but it does it very, very well.
Okay.
Rob, I went and had a look at the Caldor City article about Trial of a Time Lord, which is 100 stupid and great things about Trial of a Time Lord. And I just want to make one comment here, because I think it does reflect on something that a lot of fans say about this story that I'm sure some fans will be amazed we haven't mentioned yet.
Okay.
They say, the true irony of the megabyte modem, that had Pip and Jane Baker gone for some preposterous bit of technobabble like, say, Pentalion Drive or Trionic Lattice or Massive Ultrasonic Transmitter, they wouldn't get such a derisive reaction from subsequent audiences. And I can kind of go with that. Like, if you just make up some nonsense technobabble, everyone's like, oh yes, very, very well written. If you sort of go, let's use some words that are real sciencey words, then everybody has a go. But also I think genuinely people are misreading that scene, because Mel opens up this sort of steampunk tech and goes, oh, a megabyte modem. And the Doctor clearly has a look on his face that's like, no, it's a maser. Right. So it's not actually a megabyte modem. It's just Mel, with her 1980s technology, goes, oh, I think that's what it is. And he's like, no, it's a maser.
Yeah.
But anyway, I don't care about that scene, but it's one that everybody seems to comment on. So I thought I'd make that comment. I thought this was the weakest segment of the trial.
Oh, really? Okay. I'm not sure it is. I think it could be better than Mindwarp. I
was clearly in the right frame of mood to appreciate Mindwarp. So I walked into this with my rankings being Vervoids, Mysterious Planet, Ultimate Foe, Mindwarp. And I've walked out with my rankings being Mysterious Planet, Vervoids, Mindwarp, Ultimate Foe. So several of them have swapped places.
How interesting. Wow, okay.
But overall, are we at overall, Rob?
Yeah, I think so.
I think so too. Overall, this was a lot more fun than I expected. And I can't say anything more than that. Not an instant classic, a lot of faults, a lot going on in the production. But I enjoyed watching this a lot more than I expected. I had fun. The end.
Yeah, look, I think there's something we've got to address, and it's in terms of the show itself. I think we can see why Colin was sacked after it, even though it's not his fault. I mean, he didn't plan the season out. He didn't write the season. I think the production team let him down. But you can imagine the BBC looking at this and thinking, Christ, we gave them the hiatus and they've just returned with the same Doctor, with the same look, acting the same, in the same show. I think only Ultimate Foe, again, you know, I don't think that was the worst in the season. I think only Ultimate Foe feels like it's doing something new for Doctor Who. I think of when the Doctor's in that cart, like he's being led to the guillotine in the French Revolution, and the cart has Gallifreyan guards, which is just a really weird and cool juxtaposition. I thought that looks really cool, even though not much attention is drawn to it. They're just walking along with the cart, but I think it looks really great. So there's this glimmer, I think, Dave, of new and weird Doctor Who almost shining through what the Cartmel era might start to tease out. But it's only newish, you know, because Deadly Assassin had already done trippy Matrix shenanigans a decade earlier. Too little, too late. You can see why the BBC were fed up and wanted to push for something new. I just think it's worth noting that Colin does get punted. I think the announcement went out on the day of the last episode or something.
Yeah, it's really interesting that the BBC's reaction to this wasn't to sack the coach, but to sack the key forward.
Yeah.
Now, whether that was a right or wrong decision, history will always judge. I think every fan's had that conversation about the fact that having cancelled the show, then backtracked and just put the show on hiatus for 18 months, the BBC didn't change the producer, the script editor, the lead, the co-lead, most of the lineup, anything like that. And neither did J&T and Eric Say would sit down with that 8 months and go, right, what do they want us to do differently? What's the different tone? What's a different approach? What does television look like in 1986 that it didn't look like in 1980? Nobody had that conversation other than let's get a slightly reworked version of the theme tune and hey, let's do this umbrella thing because the show's on trial, let's make it a trial. Yes, that's very disappointing, and yes, they were just begging for BBC intervention, and in the end, Saywood walked in a fairly unpleasant way, but the BBC's intervention was, we're sacking Colin.
Yeah, and of course they had all the original season 23 stories, some of them in an advanced state, some of them maybe just as ideas. Why not polish those for an extra extended period of time and get them really good, rather than throwing the baby out with the bathwater and starting again just so there could be a trial? I still don't get that.
No, but I guess that's a bigger conversation about the history of the show. Judging what's on screen, I come back to looks a bit crap in places, but fun.
Yeah, I think that's more than fair.
Well, that was our look at both Season 23 and The Trial of a Time Lord. As always, write in, let us know what you thought, because we always love to hear whether you agreed with us or not. And as we move to our listener messages, Rob, we have somebody who has voicemailed in with a very interesting and personal story about our Gin and TARDIS episode on the Mark of the Rani.
Yeah, this is Stuart James Barham, who has sent us a voicemail in the past, so thanks for sending us another one, Stuart. Why don't we just press play on this, Dave?
Hey guys, just listened to your Gin and TARDIS on the Mark of the Rani. Excellent. And yeah, I concur, it's not one of Colin's best. Looks good though. I've been to the locations where they filmed it and it's beautiful. Another little story. I've worked with Gary Caddy, who played Luke a few times in the past. He's a lovely guy. Of course, being a Doctor Who fan, I had to ask him questions about filming Mark of the Rani. One of the things he said, one of the anecdotes was when they did the transformation, when he turns into a tree, it was really dangerous because obviously they had to blow all this foliage up, and of course a lot of it went into his face. Hey guys, yeah, sorry about the bad sound. It's a bit blowy on the seafront here. As I say, I worked with Gary Caddy on a few projects over the years since he did the Doctor Who, and yeah, I think one of his recurring anecdotes or memories was when they did the explosion, the jet of air going up. It was like he just got so much foliage in his face. It was like he said it was very, very dangerous. But hey, health and safety back in those days wasn't as great as it is now. But he enjoyed the experience overall. But it was good to talk to him, and he's a lovely guy. He's still got the great hair. I didn't get him to do the Geordie accent though. But yeah, keep up the good work, guys. I'm really loving the show. Listening to all the old episodes as well as every new one that comes out. So have a good day, guys, and speak to you soon.
Yeah, so very interesting stuff there, Dave. Working with Gary Caddy, who of course is Luke Ward in Mark of the Rani, and getting a face full of foliage for his trouble.
Yeah,
I can just imagine Stuart asking him all these questions about what it was like to make Doctor Who.
Yeah, no, what an interesting insight. So thank you for getting in touch with us again, Stuart. I will keep going with Nick Pickering via Facebook, also commenting on our Gin and TARDIS episode. Hated this when I first saw parts of it during the original broadcast, but now think it's got a lot of clever thinking behind it and had huge potential for future storylines. As usual, plot and the BBC's production abilities were of mixed results, but the good far outweighs the bad, and I now love this story. Colin Baker at his best, perhaps. More importantly, another stunning outro theme for this episode of Gin and TARDIS. Who writes and performs this stuff? It's reaching legendary status, in my humble opinion. May I suggest a live performance at a convention? Oh, heck, here's an idea.
Wow.
How about a convention of Doctor Who podcasts? Obviously including guests from the series, Big Finish, authors, etc. Anyway, thanks for a very enjoyable episode. Looking forward to the next one.
Well, thank you very much. In terms of who writes that stuff, I guess I write the lyrics. In terms of who performs it, I believe his name is Mr. A Synthesized Voice.
The wonders of modern technology there, Rob.
Yes, indeed.
Yes. No, we'll leave that one there, but thanks, Nick, for writing in. You've got one from friend of the show and a fellow podcaster, Doc Hume.
Yeah, Doc Hume, talking about our Remakes with Disney Money episode. He says, "Oh, you shallow chaps. No. While there may be arguments for it here and there, the very last story that Disney Money should be allowed anywhere near is Ark in Space. This story is possibly the summit of one of the central tenets behind the appeal of Doctor Who, the idea that a small budget can inspire great ideas, certainly as far as design is concerned. How could anyone imagine that the design genius that is Roger Murray Leach's curved corridor could satisfactorily be replaced by an actual full 360-degree corridor set built in Cardiff, or more likely a CGI-generated corridor? And the same with the suspended animation chamber. The very fact that we know subconsciously that the corridor set is just a small arc of a circle makes it all the more rewarding. In fact, the story should have been named Ark in Space, Ark with a C, as a tribute to this. The very fact we also know subconsciously that the other rooms of the suspended animation chamber are no more than strategically placed mirrors, again makes it all the more rewarding. Okay, so the full model of the Ark from space and the Wirren costumes look bobbins, but those are trivia compared to what was achieved in the set design. It was genius to avoid the expense of adding ladders to the suspended animation chamber by having a moving floor to allow the people in the upper layers to climb down. Then it was double genius to then avoid the even greater expense of installing a moving floor by merely adding a sign on the wall saying "Do not enter cryogenic chamber" when the floor is in motion. And I'm not even going to start on the idea that the only thing required to make Warriors the deeper wonderful story was a more convincing Merca. I say Disney money schmizd me money. We didn't build an empire from a tiny group of rainy islands by using large and expensive armies. We did it by conning people, by sleight of hand, by the imperialist equivalent of telling countries that their flies were undone and then punching them in the nose when they looked down to check. That's what made Doctor Who what it is, or was. If we're going to value throwing cash at something, we might as well watch the Star Wars franchise post the 1980s, and or accepted. Love and hugs from Doc Hume. And Dave, I think Doc had a bit of fun writing that.
I think he did as well. And look, as much as we had some fun doing our list makers on top 5 stories we'll remake with Disney money, Doc's absolutely right that the moment you start to tamper with these things, there's all sorts of unintended consequences. You step on a butterfly, who knows what happens. And no, I wouldn't change any of it in reality.
Very good.
Zach Forrest via our website commenting on our Peter Cushing episode, Rob. Excellent discussion of 2 very fun pieces of Who media. I really enjoyed these movies. If the original episodes are a fine vintage wine enjoyed over a candlelit supper, then these 2 movies are 2 cold beers on a warm summer's evening. Both equally enjoyable and both wildly different experiences. A change I really enjoyed was Susan being portrayed by an actual child, rather than the very adult Carol Ann Ford. Of course, the actress portraying her likely went a long way towards that. Roberta Tovey was remarkable, really selling the child genius character well. The major thing I disliked, however, was the design of the TARDIS interior. Maybe I'm just overly fond of the roundels and the iconic centre console, but my God, that first iteration was such an eclectic mess. It felt like they were travelling in an old arcade that someone had taken a baseball bat to. Cushing's Doctor Who is a delight, even if he barely resembles the Doctor as we know him at all. The closest mainline Doctor to him would probably be Troughton or Smith, but certainly not Hartnell. All in all, I love these films and would gladly rewatch them again for a quick fix of science fiction fun. Thank you, Zach.
Yeah, and I agree with him on that TARDIS interior. I know you don't, Dave, but I do.
I don't, but I do agree with the wine versus beer analogy. That's really clever.
Yeah, that was good. This is Paul via email. He says, "Hello, Rob and Dave. I hope you're both doing well. I wanted to introduce myself and have a few things to say. Firstly, the Doctor Who show is sublime. Top 3 material. I've been listening for a few years now, and it's a staple in my week. Sometimes I feel like being a Doctor Who fan is an addiction, so I wanted to say hello and tip my hat to you both. I feel it's time to reach out in the wilderness years ahead. Sending much love from Who Valley from Paul. And P.S. Here's one for the list makers. Top 5 stories that hit you for nostalgic reasons. It doesn't matter if the story isn't great or music is poor, etc. This is about nostalgia and early memories of the Doctor on your TV. When did it hit you? Apologies if you've already done this already. I have plenty of ideas. I'm bristling with them." Well, thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Paul. That's a very fun idea. And I have to say, having just had an email from Doc Hume, who always introduces the Diddly Dum podcast as the 4th best Doctor Who podcast, now that I know we're top 3 material, I guess we're just one above them.
1 to 3 above them, yes.
Well, if we were number 2, we'd be taking top 2, wouldn't we? So we must be number 3.
Oh, I see. Unless it was a rotating top 3. You know, sometimes on some days something's number 1 and on the next day it's number 3.
I think we're overthinking this, Rob.
Oh, possibly. Okay, move
so
on.
I will continue with a comment from Constable Hansy via YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
I've just been listening to your Terrance Dicks tribute episode from September 2019. Somehow I missed this the first time around. But just wanted to say what a delightful and deserved tribute that was for one of our show's greats. The first Terrance book I got was the Making Of, with the Sea Devil cover. Then I moved on to the Auton stories, The Abominable Snowman and Axos, as well as soaking in other classics by other writers. I love the Doomsday Weapon. I never met the man, and I suspect I would have gotten tongue-tied if I had, but I hope I would have been able to keep it together long enough to tell him how much his little books meant to me. With John as my Doctor, I really felt I was spoilt for choice with all the wonderful adaptations of the Third Doctor adventures. Even today, I've got all of the audiobooks for that illustrious era and listen to them fairly regularly, still getting the same amount of joy from them as I did way back when. Anyway, lovely tribute from you two. 6 years has flown by, and I still get a little sad knowing he's no longer with us. Hopefully he's up there with Barry, John, Roger, Nick, Richard, and dear Liz having a great time. We were so lucky to have lived in these times. The legacy that Terrance and all the aforementioned left behind is huge. All I hope is that new fans of the show find themselves lapping up those stories with the same zeal that I did. Constable Hansy, what a lovely comment to make. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, and I'll just say, in the past week, I've seen someone tweeting pictures of their... You know, they did those big hardcover omnibuses, and they're like the complete Terrance Dicks.
Yes.
Volume 1, Volume
them.
2. You've got them, okay. Yeah, a guy was posting some pictures of them, and so when Constable Hansy says, you know, he hopes in the future new fans will lap this stuff up, I think, yeah, they will, because there are collections like that. It's getting much harder to find the Target novels, especially Target novels in nice condition. You know, online you see the ones for sale, and they're sometimes a bit ratty. But a new fan can go out and buy the complete Terrance Dicks, which I guess isn't complete because you've then got to buy Volume 2. But I digress. And just get the stories in a lovely hardcover and enjoy them. It is possible. Please do it if you've never done it. His book's just wonderful to read.
Yeah, very good point.
This is Dylan Mooney via YouTube on our top Master Stories episodes. He says, "Hi guys, an absolute privilege to have my topic discussed. Some interesting picks there. Bizarrely, I haven't been able to connect with the Time Monster for some reason. I think I came to it as maybe my last or second to last classic Who to watch. Dave has persuaded me to give it another go in the next couple of days. My list would be number 1, The Demons, number 2, World Enough and Time, number 3, The Sea Devils, number 4, The Five Doctors. A cheat perhaps, but I always found Ainley gave a good balance here, not too much over the top and enjoying himself. And number 5, Utopia, the first episode. P.S. Master from 2003 would be my pick for his best audio appearance, and Beavers is perfect for it. All the best from Dublin."
Thank you, Dylan. Very curious to find out how you went with the Time Monster. At Howabouse via YouTube on our Top Masters stories says, the Deadly Assassin and Survival are great examples of taking a long-running character and taking them back to dramatic basics. Also, plenty of contenders for the worst stories when it's sometimes quantity over quality with episodes.
Very
Fair
true.
enough.
Yeah. Colbaker, also on Top Master Stories, says number 1, The Demons, number 2, The Sea Devils, number 3, The Time Monster, number 4, Terror of the Autons, number 5, The Mind of Evil. There's only one master.
Look. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, fair enough.
Fair enough. A comment from Constable Handsies, again on our top 5 master stories. I only really liked Delgado's master, sorry. So my list. 1, The Sea Devils, that's coming up a lot. 2, The Demons, that's also coming up a lot. The Mind of Evil, likewise. Terror of the Autons. 5, Claws of Axos. Ainley had his moments, but the chuckling got on my nerves. The modern masters are all too crazy for me.
Yeah, fair enough. Martin Wells via YouTube about our Wrath of Khan episode. Great film, but it has an odd scene. Why does McCoy verbally attack and personally insult poor Spock about something both had just heard about? It's like McCoy has forgotten Spock was A, Vulcan, and B, just stating the obvious. I always thought McCoy was being a complete dick.
There is a part of McCoy's character that is a bit dicky.
Yep.
He's one of those blokes who always tells you how he feels. And 90% of the time, that's actually genuinely insightful and the sort of raw emotion we want. And the other 20% of the time, it's like, that's a bit of a dick move. Which just makes him a real person.
That's true. That's true.
Finally, Baz Warrington via YouTube says, again about our Wrath of Khan episode, good episode, chaps. Interesting chat. Not just one of the best Star Trek films, but one of my favourite films overall. Dave was talking of the Marcus Kirk plotline feeling a little lightweight, and I agree to some extent. However, if you've not read the movie tie-in novel by Vonda McIntyre, I think, it is well worth a read. It was my first experience of the story. If memory serves, it expands greatly on the Genesis Science team and even includes Khan's arrival there. I've not read it in 40 years, so I may have dreamed it. I might track it down again myself. Look, I haven't read it either for about 30 years, well, maybe 25, but yes, I do have memories of that, and I think you are correct, Baz.
Reminds me of my possible hallucination about the Ultimate Foe novelisation that I'm going to go and check after we record this episode.
Very nice. Thanks again to all our listeners who've written in. We really appreciate it. But Rob, we'll now just do our What Have You Been Watching segment. I'll kick us off because I've seen a couple of things over the last month. I did watch the first 4 episodes of Season 2 of Wednesday, which have dropped, and I really enjoyed them. I mostly enjoyed Season 1 of Wednesday, but I thought Season 2 worked really well. They know what they're doing. They know what works well. Introducing Pugsley as a full-time character has worked really well. So really looking forward to the second half of Season 2 of Wednesday. Now, Rob, there's a slightly dodgy YouTube channel that I follow that drops a whole bunch of old UK sitcoms every now and then. And that's where I've been watching Drop the Dead Donkey, as it's dropped sort of one episode every now and then. But they also dropped all of the series Going Straight, which is the 1-season sequel to Porridge that they made. And I thought I'd check this out, see what it's like. And look, it's okay. But there was an episode where this sort of teenage girl dropout tries to pickpocket Ronnie Barker, and he catches her and he sort of bonds with her. And I'm sitting there through the whole episode going, she's really familiar. It's bloody Roberta Tovey.
No, really?
Yes. Obviously sort of probably about 10 years older than she was in the Cushing movies. But yeah, there she was. So that was very cool. But look, I have been inspired by you, Rob, continuing to go back and watch Deep Space Nine. I haven't quite done the whole great journey and watched every episode, but as I'm working through, I've tried to watch a lot of episodes that I haven't seen in a very long time. In a couple of cases since first broadcast, some of them have been really pleasant surprises. Some of them have been those episodes that I can clearly see I might have been a bit bored by or dismissive by when I was 15, 16, 17, but watch them now and go, wow, that was a really good one. How did I miss that one? And some of them you go, there's a reason I haven't watched this for 30 years, and you know, if I make it another 30, maybe I'll watch it then. But look, really enjoying it. Interesting to see where the arcs are going and how the studio interfered with the arcs in a couple of seasons and diverted things. But yeah, I've really enjoyed it. Rob, what about you?
Dave, it was a pretty busy month this past one, watching 14 episodes of Doctor Who for this episode and keeping up my Deep Space Nine viewing with the wife. I've also watched a bit more of the new seasons of All Creatures Great and Small. I really haven't done much more than that, but I know Wednesday is out, and I'm someone who was singing the first season's praises before it went viral. I remember it was out for like a week or two, and no one was really talking about it. And I'm saying to people at work, Wednesday is really fun. Watch Wednesday.
You were telling me to watch it. You were one of the reasons I watched it, yeah.
Yeah. And then a few weeks in, it went viral with the dance scene where she dances at the dance. And to me, that was the most least interesting thing about the whole season. But
Yeah.
that's the thing that went viral and got everyone watching Wednesday. So long story short, I consider myself a real OG of that series. And I've been waiting with bated breath all year. But then it finally dropped. And I was like, this is a bad time. So I actually haven't tuned in, but I do intend to. I have seen some reports say it's not as good as the first season, but also acknowledging that it's hard for lightning to strike twice. So my expectations are tempered before I'm going in, but it's probably the show I will be getting to next.
Yeah, I am curious about the whole dropping 4 episodes and 4 episodes idea. I get putting a week between the drops, but the big break between the drops I'm not sure works.
It's just to keep people subscribed, isn't it, to Netflix?
Yeah, look, I guess it is. But fair enough. Now, next month, Rob,
Yes,
I'm in Africa
you are.
for the whole month.
Yes.
So
What will I do?
what will you do, Rob? What will you do?
Well, I will say, dear listener, we have never missed a monthly episode ever on the show, no matter what's been going on in both our lives. So I will be producing something with a guest host. I do have someone lined up. The topic has yet to be hammered out. We sort of know what it will be, but I'll keep that under my hat. Oh, what the hell. I'll say it's a classic episode deep dive.
Perfect. I look forward to listening to that. And then I'll be back in October when we said a while ago, Rob, that we really enjoyed doing our deep dives into books. So we're going to make that a 6-monthly thing. So we will be due for a 6-monthly look at a Doctor Who book. I can tell you it's going to be a new adventure. We've picked what it's going to be because I wanted to take it on the plane and read it on the way to Africa. But we won't tell the audience what it is until the end of the September episode. But there's a lot to look forward to on the Doctor Who show. We, of course, have got another list makers coming up this month. We hope to drop another Gin and TARDIS, which we should record this weekend. Now, for listeners who aren't aware, we're going to go down to the Troughton era this time, but because there aren't a lot of 4-part Troughtons to watch, we decided we're going to watch 4 separate episodes of Troughton. So I can hear you sitting, I've got to produce this at the back of your mind there, Rob.
I'm just thinking how you're going to pace yourselves. Will you say too much about one episode and not enough about another? You know, how are you going to pace yourselves over that hour?
How are we going to pace the gin?
Yeah, well, indeed.
Look, it's an experiment. It's something a bit different from the Gin and TARDIS, but we do want to look at the Troughton era. And as I said at the end of our last Gin and TARDIS episode, we all think Tomb of the Cybermen's great. We all think the Crotons is a bit naff. We've got nothing to say. Let's look at some episodes we don't normally look at and see what we'll react. If it doesn't work, we don't do it again. Who cares?
Yeah, fair enough.
I'll enjoy their company, I'm sure.
Very good.
Oh, and an alternate galaxies on Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country.
Yeah, wow, we've got to record that.
We have to go to record that. But until then,
Yes.
I've been Dave.
And I've been Rob.
And we'll speak again soon.
Yes, we will. Bye-bye.
The trial continues.
The doctor's in the dock, the Time Lords frown. Colin's coat's the loudest thing in town. The Valyar's searing, you're guilty of sin, and the Master's laughing. Well, let me join in. 14 weeks in court, chaos galore. Ravelox, Thor's data, Vervoid gore. The Valyar schemes, the doctor fights back, and the Master's plotting on the attack. On Thoros Beta, Sills and Slime. Brian West's yelling all the time. The Matrix breaks, the truth's revealed. The doctor's enemy is himself concealed. 14 weeks in court, oh what a mess. Time loops and monsters in excess. The Valyar's the doctor, but evil of course. And Perry's fate sparks much fan discourse. Plant monsters, wig scandal. while Pip and Jane are on the phone. 14 weeks in court, the verdict's in. The doctor's free, but the ratings are thin. Colin's coat still blinds the crowd. Trial of the Time Lord, it's bizarre and loud. So if you got the tapes, go on, press play. Sit through 14 weeks of Time Lord ballet. The doctor's fate absurdly spun. Longest trial in history, but kind of fun.